The debate over offshore fossil fuel extraction and how it squares with this country's climate ambitions was thrust back into the spotlight today. Climate activists were at the Court of Session in Edinburgh to try and halt the development of the Rosebank oil field off Shetland and the Jackdaw gas field off Aberdeen. If their legal challenge is successful, operators will have to resubmit environmental impact assessments for approval before drilling can begin. Supporters of the project say they are needed for ensuring the UK's energy security, but critics claim they fly in the face of net zero ambitions.
We're really hoping and expecting that the Scottish courts will uphold the precedent set saying that all emissions from oil and gas projects need to be counted, and will reject these oil and gas permits and tell the companies to get out of those fields now.
Well, we debated the pros and cons of further oil and gas exploration with the energy specialist Alistair Thomas, who works for the strategic advisory firm True North, and Rosie Hampton, a Just Transition campaigner with Friends of the Earth Scotland. Alistair, campaigners think the licences were awarded under a flawed process. How do you see the situation?
I think it's a difficult process for the industry to grapple with at the moment. I think it would be environmentally and economically incoherent if we didn't allow these projects to go ahead. Jackdaw will account for 6% of Britain's gas supply. It would make more sense to develop that than to import it from places like Qatar and the United States at a higher carbon footprint. And Rosebank, this is a 2,000 job project. It's £6 billion directly going to the UK supply chain. And let's not forget, Scottish GVA, 10% of that comes from oil and gas. And I think most importantly, I'm coming to you from Aberdeen, we have the highest concentration of subsea companies and expertise anywhere in Europe. We're really primed for work in offshore wind and hydrogen, carbon capture and storage. The market simply isn't there yet.
Rosie, what is your response to that? I mean, Alistair mentions a few things, how important the jobs are and the money coming to the British economy.
You know, jobs are absolutely crucial to the energy transition, which is why we are totally against fields like Jackdaw and Rosebank, particularly when you look at the statistics that have couched them. So jobs supported by the oil and gas industry have halved in the last decade, despite 100 or so oil licenses granted within that time. The real secure long-term jobs are in the renewables industry, and it actually takes political will and investment to create those jobs. And if we're chasing the fragments of a dying industry by looking for jobs in a geological basin which is maturing and declining, then of course we're never going to find them there.
And what's your response to that, Alistair? I mean, we hear a lot about the just transition to green energy, but how committed are the oil companies to it, really?
Look, I work day and daily with companies in offshore wind, in carbon capture and storage and hydrogen, and yes, in oil and gas as well. And all of these companies are on the ground grappling with the challenges of net zero and the energy transition. They are committed, fully committed to the job of getting on with the transition. But we need to be realistic about the challenges here. It is a Herculean task. We need to unprecedented levels of offshore wind installation. We need unprecedented levels of grid capacity onshore across our landscapes installed. And that's before we convert our heat pump, our gas boilers for heat pumps and our petrol and diesel cars for electric vehicles. It is a huge task. In the meantime, we need to have work available for this supply chain, which is, in my view, the most important national asset we have to get us to net zero. If we don't have work in the interim period, which comes from projects like Rosebank and Jackdaw, we will lose that supply chain further. And just to address that earlier point in terms of the hemorrhaging of jobs before, look, we've had 2 downturns in recent memory from the oil and gas sector. That's true. Part of that is due to the COVID pandemic. And I totally agree that it requires political will to make this transition happen. We're all committed to that end goal, but it's about getting the journey right as well.